Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and today the new league has been announced, the Blight League. So in today's video, I kind of wanted to take a look at the new announcement and do some real in-depth kind of analysis, because I don't think too many people are talking about this league, and they're definitely not digging into all the information that was in the video, so I think maybe I can bring a bit of that to light. But to begin with, let's get the elephant out of the room. The league has obviously been announced, and it's had a pretty cold reception, with a lot of people not liking the initial look of it. Me included. My initial reaction was that it was a bit of a yikes. It looked a lot like the bestiary kind of thing, like that. Does this really belong in PoE? Having said that though, I've had a bit of a sit down and I've looked through everything, and I think I'm actually now kind of excited about the league and what it could potentially offer, and hopefully I can get you guys a little bit excited as well, or at least explain my point of view of why I am excited. So to begin with, I don't normally do this kind of stuff. I generally like to wait until I play the new league to get my opinion out there. So all of the stuff here is obviously I haven't played the league myself. It's just what I've looked at from the videos. Like I've gone frame by frame by frame to try and learn, and I've also talked with some other people, and we've kind of come up with some opinions and stuff like that. So I'm going to be sharing that with you guys and kind of putting it out there today. So to begin with, I kind of wanted to go over the league mechanic because the video doesn't really do a very good job at explaining what's going on. There's a lot of stuff in the videos which is just never explained, like a lot of these are interfaced down the bottom, what that means, how it's going to impact your gameplay, and I think that that's a little bit of a dud on GGG's part, but obviously there's a lot to fit in, and it's a very complex league mechanic to play, it seems. So I'm going to do my best to explain it, and we're going to start like kind of scratching the surface here of why I'm starting to become so excited about this league. So we're going to pause this video and we're going to jump into my Google Doc that I made. It's a bit rough and ready, but it should get the job done. So to begin with, we're playing a tower defense. Every map that you run into, you will have a tower defense event, which is indicated by the big balloon in the map. And basically the way it works is you start up the event and you have a little machine that's attached to that balloon, and if monsters reach that, they start chipping away at the durability. And every time you lose a durability, you lose some potential rewards, from my understanding. So you're basically defending an area, so it's like kind of like a reverse breach to some extent. If you think about it that way, the league is already pretty cool. It's on the level of breach, legion, all those kind of like abyss. You're basically going to have a ton of monsters to kill, and there's going to be a ton of loot. So just on the loot section to begin with, going through the footage, I can confirm that there is obviously a Legion-like loot system, which will award you chests based on how well you defended the objective, and there is also a loot explosion that happens at the end of the event based on the monsters you killed. And if you want to see that in action, go to Ziggy D's Blight video and go to 11 minutes, and you can quite clearly see the classic kind of incursion or delve loot kind of spiral coming out of the balloon. So that's pretty interesting. So we've got some magic find action there, and we've also got some chest action. So it's kind of satisfying both of those kind of player needs, and it will allow the group content to obviously come in there and scale that as well, whether that's a good thing or not. Having said that though, we obviously don't know how much loot the monsters drop themselves, but it is there, and you can expect to get some standard loot from that as well. So now, the tower defense section, let's get into that, because that is quite a complex mechanic that they've just dumped in here and not explained. So I've got a few screenshots, as I said, and we're going to go through them kind of together here. Let's see if I can full screen this. There we go. So to begin with, there is 6 tower types. I should probably go over them before we start, but basically the premise of this is that you can run around defending the balloon and creating towers and defending the balloon basically from these invading tendrils that come and have portals attached to them with monsters snake down. And you can put towers next to those tendrils based on where they spawn, and those towers will do things. So these towers come in the form of 6 different types, which you can choose from. Now these towers are the following: the Seismic Tower, which I believe is physical damage and stuns, the Shock Nova Tower, which does shocking ground and lightning damage in an AoE around it, the Summoning Tower, which summons minions and doesn't seem to have any other benefits, the Chilling Tower, which does a slowing beam effect on multiple monsters in an area, the Fireball Tower, which just seems to be a DPS tower, which shoots one to a few fireballs. We'll go into that in a second. And the Empowering Tower, which empowers towers around it. It's a fairly classic tower in tower defense. So it's a fairly involved system. You've got a lot of different towers here, and they all serve different purposes. For those of you who do play tower defense games, generally you have to use a combination of these towers to kind of achieve your goal. But when you add in a super overpowered player character, I'm not too sure where those synergies are going to end up. So to begin with, just a few more things on the tower front. As you kill enemies while the event is active, you will accumulate resources, which you'll be able to see down here at the bottom of the screen. So these resources can be used to buy towers and upgrade towers. So in terms of the tower placement, you can't just place them anywhere. There's certain locations that spawn adjacent to each of the Blight tendrils that spawn with the event, and you kind of place the towers around those tendrils. So it's kind of like predetermined locations. You'll click on the hammer, you'll get to choose between the 6 towers, you'll choose your tower, and then it's spawned. So once you've spawned in your towers, you then have the option to upgrade them using some more of your resources. So upgrading the towers obviously costs the money, but it also increases the ability of your towers. So I think I have a picture of that here. Yep. So we have, okay, it's probably a bad example, but anyway, we have like an upgrade user interface over here. So there's a total of 4 different levels that towers can be. There's level 1, obviously, which is what it is when you build it. You can upgrade it to level 2 then, which increases its stats. Level 3 further increases its stats. And when you go to upgrade it to level 4, it will actually evolve the tower into one of 2 different towers based on your choice. So this is a pretty interesting mechanic. I'm kind of surprised that they did this, because it basically brings the total number of towers to technically 18 different variants, because the evolutions do seem to be quite different to the original tower. Let's use the Summoning Tower, for example. So this summons 1, 2, and then 3 minions based on the first 3 ranks, and then at rank 4 it goes back down to 1 minion, but it has the option to summon a flying minion or a tank-like minion, which is pretty interesting. So there's definitely a lot of depth here in terms of the towers, and where you like what ones you want to use, and all that kind of stuff. So with that out of the way, you now know pretty much everything that there is to know about towers based on the current information and video footage supplied. So it's basically going to be build your towers, upgrade your towers, maybe use some combination of them to achieve some interesting results. I think the probably most likely one that you'll use is the slowing one and the empowering one, maybe with some DPS ones. I'm not too sure, but that's that covered. Let's get into the next portion of this league. So the next thing is that GG has introduced some form of weakness mechanic to this league. So basically what that means is, you can see here this part of the user interface. So this part of the user interface is indicating how many events or how many tendrils will be present in this spore or blight mechanic event. So in this one, we can see that we're going to get a total of 5 different tendrils. So what a tendril is essentially is something that will spawn from away from the balloon and connect to the balloon, and then monsters will obviously come down that pathway, that highway. And then obviously you put your towers around that as you see fit. And they'll spawn in continuously throughout the encounter, and it seems like you can have anywhere between like 3 of them all the way up to like, it seems like 20 of them. So that's pretty interesting. So what the point here is that right here, this indicates how many are active, how many you have in total that will be spawning, and the kind of like status of them. So in addition to that, each of these blight tendrils can have a weakness attached to them, it seems. So as you can see here, we have some icons, and these are actually the icons of the towers which will counter these specific blight tendrils and the monsters that come down them. So you can see here we have a frost, like an ice shard here. So this means that the ice tower, I'm assuming, will be particularly effective against this specific tendril. So I suppose if you can identify which one that is, fingers crossed that there's some sort of indicator, you'd put your ice towers near there and they'd do a really good job. Whereas this one's the icon for the minion, the summoning kind of one, so you'd put your summoning ones near those ones. So that's pretty interesting. An additional mechanic there. I'm not sure we needed the additional complexity, but there you go. It's there nonetheless. So pretty interesting there. And then just to kind of round this out, obviously we have our resources down the bottom, and then we have our pump durability, which is going to be determining how much like life is on the pump and whether we're succeeding or failing. So we'll move on a little bit here to some more information about this part of the user interface, because this is basically equivalent to your Legion Eternal Conflict kind of loot bar. You know how we filled up the loot bar and it kind of got more and more and more loot? It's very similar. I think they've taken kind of some inspiration from that. So let's see, loot rewards here. So I think this is a pretty good demonstration of the rewards. So as you can see here, once you complete successfully one of the Blight tendrils, it will change from a portal icon here into like this kind of this clump. And basically what that means is that this Blight tendril is then ready for looting. You can see here up here it's called a Blight cyst. This is the equivalent of like a Legion chest. So once you finish one of the tendrils or one of the portals, it'll turn into a Blight cyst that you can get, then go open up and loot. So in terms of the rewards, they are insane if you can be bothered to do the mechanic. So in this specific encounter, I think I counted like 17 of them. That's 17 chests, which could potentially contain who knows what, which is pretty cool as long as you complete the encounter successfully. So we now know that you can have these chests. This means that they're ready to be looted. This means that they're currently active and sending monsters at you. And this gray means that they're not active yet, but they will become active at some point in the future. So you can kind of plan which towers you want to use for each encounter, because you can see beforehand which towers are going to be specifically effective against some of the different tendrils. So it's pretty interesting, and I guess it's pretty simple once you do understand it. So pretty cool there, and that's pretty much all you really need to know about the league mechanic itself. So not too much more there. Obviously we don't really know the full extent of the forking kind of evolution path at rank 4, but I'm not sure that'll be too relevant anyway. But yeah, I do know one of them, which is obviously the summoning tower, but they may change that, we don't know. Again, all this stuff is probably subject to change, just like they did in Synthesis League. So yeah, definitely pretty interesting. Going to be a lot of loot to be had. That's everything I'm going to be talking about with the main league mechanic. Overall, do I think it's going to be a good mechanic? I think it could be really fun if they get the tuning just right, but I will talk about my concerns at the end of the video. I think it's going to be a complete nightmare on console, almost unplayable, but I'm playing on PC, just lucky. So yeah, moving right along. Let's move on to crafting. So there was a new resource introduced in the Path of Exile Blight League, and that is oils. That's kind of the new kind of like the hotness, the fossil kind of thing, which we saw in Delve, and the maybe like kind of similar to resonators or splinters that were in Legion. The new one is oils. So oils are going to be the currency that you're going to be craving for the Blight League, and they're going to be used for all sorts of things. They can augment super blighted maps, which are basically the end game content of this league. So they can augment them. Basically, they're like sextants or scarabs for that kind of content. And then they can also be used to craft amulets. So enchanted amulets, but we're not going to get into that too much. And they can also craft enchanted rings. So basically the upshot here is that these are going to be very in demand, and people are going to be wanting these oils, which will be kind of like pretty cool. So they're going to be similar to Breach Splinters and Legion Splinters. I did have a few points that I wanted to make about these oils though. I do feel like if the league is successful and the endgame farming is fun, the oils will be in demand obviously, and there will be a bit of an interesting economy around them, because obviously due to the crafting and the enchanting of amulets and the rings, there'll be kind of like a paradigm, if you will, of the oils. There'll be people wanting to use them for the maps, and there'll be people wanting to use them for the enchants. So it's going to be a kind of like who wants to pay more. If the enchants are super desirable and makes the oils worth multiple exalts, it's going to kind of cut off the mapping guys at the knees, because I doubt that the oils will be adding additional exalts to the map. So I don't know if I like that the currencies are kind of used for both the crafting and the mapping. It may cause some issues with one party or the other kind of screwing over the other party. Which is potentially not the best, because I mean, if you want to have fun with the league, it would suck if all of the big crafting moguls are kind of just buying up all of your mapping materials. So I'm not sure I'm a big fan of that. In addition to that, one observation I made is that for the ring enchantments, you require 2 oils to enchant a ring to get a different tower enchantment, and there's 6 different types of towers here, and there's 12 different oils, so there's 144 different enchants for the towers, which is pretty interesting. That means there's going to be a lot of variation. If you're into the whole tower defense thing, you will have a lot of really cool opportunities to modify your towers via your rings. So pretty cool. So in terms of end game kind of activities, I think what it's going to be this league is the blighted maps. Blighted maps are maps that I'm assuming just drop in normal maps, but are kind of upgraded, and they feature exclusively the league mechanics. So it's kind of like a Domain of Timeless Conflict, except it's in a map and it's blight. So I'm pretty sure that's what we were looking at here before, in some of these big, you know, lots of rewards. I'm pretty sure this is a blighted map here, and that's why there's so many rewards. So in my opinion, they do look pretty crazy. I'm not sure if this is using the oils or not. I'm assuming we could see quite a lot of loot from these things, and they could be pretty fun and challenging at the tier 16 level. I'll definitely be pushing those, and I think they will be a lot of fun. So I definitely would encourage everyone to check those out if you can, and I'll definitely be checking them out and making some videos on them. So definitely pretty damn cool, and I would recommend pursuing that, and there will be plenty of videos about that coming up. I think it's going to be really interesting to find out what each of the oils do and how they influence the blighted maps, because if there's 12 different ones, then there's going to be quite a variation of things that we can do to these maps. Maybe one of them makes the tower defense kind of mode endless, and then suddenly it would be really interesting to try and implement those towers in there and try and get the most DPS out of it, like try and survive as long as possible. I think stuff like that could be pretty cool, and it would really like make me want to play the game a lot more. So in terms of concerns though, I think this is where a lot of people are coming unstuck with the league, and this will be the end of the video once I go over these things here. So there's a lot of big potential issues with this league, and that's really the problem with it. So in terms of balancing, this is the biggest issue I find with this league, and it's going to be the make or break kind of factor here in my opinion. So before even going into the tower defense thing, a mechanic like this is going to be inherently unfair based on what kind of skill you're playing. If you're playing something like cleave or anything that's not AoE heavy, you're going to have a tough time, especially if you're running around trying to build towers. You're probably going to run around, try and build a tower, and then monsters are going to come and smack your pump or balloon or whatever it is. And then you're going to have to run over there, kill the monsters, and then run over, you know, like if you're not playing an AoE or range build, it's going to be a little bit of a mess, I believe. But that's how it goes. I think, again, it's going to be like, you know, if Cyclone's not dead and Tornado Shot not dead, they're going to dominate, and it's going to be just the same as Legion, if not a little bit worse, due to the fact that you can fail these events where you can't really fail Legion, you just get less loot, right? So yeah, it could be a little bit yikes, but we'll just have to see how that pans out. But the really big problem, in my opinion, is how they're going to balance towers. So in an ideal world, you would feel like you're doing a lot on your character while also having your towers contributing, and it's only through the combination of your character and your towers that you're able to beat the toughest encounters in the Blight League. However, this is completely unrealistic, and it will never be the case. Either there's going to be one of two scenarios, in my opinion. You absolutely need the towers to be able to clear all of the Blight content, which I know already is not the case after watching those videos, because I see people flame blasting and using kind of lower tier skills to kill the monsters as a part of the Blight League. So that's not the case. And then the other extreme is that you don't need any towers, and it's basically just wave-based Elrion mission with monsters coming at you, and you just AFK in the middle, spamming tornado shot, and everything dies. And then you get your loot at the end, and it's kind of like, well, that wasn't too entertaining. So it's either going to be a breach, or it's going to be some sort of kind of like tower defense kind of like extreme, one or the other. Obviously it would be best if it was kind of somewhere in the middle, and that's why, I mean, if they balance it right, it could be really fun. But alas, I don't think that they're going to get there unless they kind of do it in a roundabout way. Like maybe the rares can only be damaged by towers, but the white monsters can be killed by you. I'm not sure. You would have to come up with some really crazy solution, but it definitely does seem like a pretty big design kind of impasse. I'm not sure how, maybe they solved it, but we'll just have to see. I think that's, if I don't like the league, that's going to be the main reason, because the towers are either redundant or they're mandatory, and that's going to be that. So the next problem is the white map problem. So in Legion, we saw people spamming the lowest tier map possible to get as many of like the league mechanic as possible. And I can see that absolutely happening once again. While it might be fun to do the highest tier content and like, you know, use all of the oils and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure the most profitable way to play will probably be to do the low tier maps for the majority of players, just because you can clear a ton of the mechanic in like obviously not as much time, because it's much more efficient to do the white maps. In addition to that, you're getting more masters which now stack, and you're also getting more Legion monoliths, because it's 10% per map. So more than likely it's going to be a white tier kind of map meta again, unless you're pushing like really high and you're like one of the 1% who can heavily invest in T16s and stuff like that, which may or may not be a letdown for some of you. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but it is what it is. The other thing which I have a few concerns with is obviously the control and like the mechanics of the league. Is it going to be easy to upgrade and build towers? Is it going to be fun to do so? You know, all that kind of stuff. Are you going to be able to see? Is there going to be any broken, rare, overpowered monsters which just one-shot you off the screen? All of these things are concerns. And again, as I mentioned, the console concerns, I feel really sorry for the people who have to play this on console, because I feel like that would be an absolute nightmare trying to upgrade towers, like moving around with the joystick. But again, we don't know until we play it. So, final closing thoughts. We're going to go into the end game really quickly, again, because that's where I'll spending most of my time, and I kind of want to quickly go over that. So as we mentioned earlier, the end game will be to gather up oils and kind of figure out what the finest combination is, and probably apply those to red maps or T16 maps and super juice them up and see what happens. Now, what could get in the way of this awesome experience is that if the oils, they don't really add too much value or too much fun or add any like difficulty or anything like that into the kind of the encounters. What I would love to see is that they kind of ramp it up how adding in multiple emblems did. That would be fantastic. And then obviously the rewards got progressively better as well. That would be fantastic. And I really do hope they go down that route with some really interesting modifiers. Like maybe one of the oils adds like 4 additional tendrils, which adds 4 additional chests, or maybe one of them, as I said, adds endless like kind of tendrils coming in, and maybe that's a really expensive one. Some of these things could be pretty interesting, and I would like to see kind of like some of those oils and what they do to maps before I kind of make a further opinion there. Loot should preferably scale with players. We do kind of have that a bit with the loot explosion at the end, but also I would like to see the chests scale a little bit with players, because obviously playing in group, especially with a league mechanic like this, which hopefully encourages group play, could be a lot of fun. In addition to that, just on the group play note, I think it's absolutely imperative that all players in the party can build towers. If that's what the league's built around, I would like to see everyone being able to build a tower. That's pretty important in my opinion. If only one person, the map creator, can build them, that's kind of lame, and it's gonna be a bit of a rain on the parade for this league. Next up, obviously encounters need to be difficult enough for the player to justify using the towers. Otherwise, again, the whole entire league is kind of pointless, and it's just another breach, really. And I mean, this one's down to happen, but it would be preferable that it's not completely face rollable by Headhunter. But I mean, let's be honest, it's going to be face rollable. And that's kind of like my overall thoughts on the league. It's going to be a bit of an introduction. Overall, I'm pretty damn excited. Me and my friend Ice have big plans for the league. We're going to push it as hard as we can. Obviously, if it ends up like Synthesis and it's not too fun, we might tap out early. But we're looking like it's looking pretty good. There looks like there's enough like kind of room in there to have a bit of fun, as long as they tune it correctly and it's not a complete face roll and too easy. It should be a blast. Hopefully you guys are a little bit more excited, or you're going to give it a bit of a try now. Make sure you just check out how it goes anyway on the channel, even if you're not playing, because I think it could be pretty interesting, at least from a viewer perspective. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.